Look, the offseason rumors are heating up, and the Philadelphia Phillies are not the only team interested in inking Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto to another deal. The Boston Red Sox are reportedly showing interest in trying to lure these two Philly stars away from the organization. I want to dive into the latest reports on each of these key players, why this impacts the Phillies at such a significant level, and why I think they need to step up right now. Let me start with this report coming from Ken Rosenthal that says the Red Sox are showing interest in JT Realmuto. Now, JT is coming off his age 34 season where he had 12 home runs, 52 RBIs, a .315 on-base percentage across 502 at-bats with 129 hits. He struck out 129 times as well. He certainly is not holding the clear-cut best catcher in baseball label the way he did when he came to Philadelphia. But what JT Realmuto still is a damn good catcher in the major leagues. My pushback to those that are ready to chase him out of the organization is look around. Where are the better options? I don't see a lot on the catcher market. Even this diminished version of JT Realmuto is in the upper echelon of production at the catcher position. The things that he brings, the raw intangibles, the ability to call a game, the ability to manage a pitching staff, are things that are really hard to put a price point on. I do think JT Realmuto needs to be back on this Phillies team, especially when you factor in things like Andrew Painter's development and his transition to the major leagues. That needs to be a priority for the organization. But it is not just JT that the Red Sox are showing interest in. We also got this report coming from John Heyman that says the Red Sox are considering signing up to two of these five bats. Uber popular Kyle Schwarber, plus Pete Alonso, Kazuma Okamoto, JT Realmuto, and last winter's big pickup, Alex Bregman. This feels like the first time we've seen Okamoto and the Red Sox actually linked together. Obviously, they're ready to spend. They want to get right in that mix. They want to bring in some big-ticket free agents, and the Phillies are holding a couple of them. Now, I would not hold JT's bat quite to the level of some of those other names on the list, but Kyle Schwarber is going to be commanding a pretty penny. The Kyle Schwarber conversation is an arms race to me. This is a guy that's going to command a ton of cash, and we know why. He's coming off a 56 home run and 132 RBI season. At age 32, he's showing no signs of slowing down. Unlike a catcher like JT Realmuto, where there's a high level of wear and tear as you transition into the advanced portions of your career, Schwarber is going to be mashing home runs for seemingly forever. This is going to be one of the biggest signings of the offseason. Him and Kyle Tucker are going to get the two highest overall contracts, with Tucker probably edging him out because of the years, but the sense of urgency should absolutely be increasing within the Phillies organization. On the bright side, we got this report coming from Todd Zolecki here. He says the Phillies have prioritized re-signing free agents Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto. The club and Schwarber are not close to a deal, according to sources. It isn't a surprise at this time of year. The feeling here is that Schwarber will remain in Philadelphia. For Schwarber directly, he absolutely is in the right and understandably wants to play the long game. His market is only going to go higher. He is going to be the big ticket bat on the free agent market, and the more teams that show interest, the higher that price point gets. This is his opportunity to change the entire financial trajectory of his family's future. I expect him to run up those numbers. For Schwarber, I also think it's interesting to see what he's going to prioritize. I do think money is going to be the bottom line end of the day, but he's spoken pretty glowingly about wanting to be in Philadelphia. This is a team that competes, that is going to be in the mix for the World Series, even if they have underperformed in past years. For the Phillies directly, you want to cut that off as short as possible. You want to make sure that you can get this guy to sign on the dotted line as soon as possible. The reason I say that is because the price is not getting lower. It also just helps you plan out the rest of your offseason. If Kyle Schwarber is to hypothetically walk away, that is a massive change to the entire integrity of this Phillies team. He's an important part of the roster beyond just what those home runs indicate, and that is a huge part of it because there's not a lot of power on this overall roster. But Schwarber is also such a vocal leader, a guy that is important within the walls of the locker room. They need to find a way to get that done as soon as possible and then turn their attention to other options. Now, some of those other options that I do think are interesting are the whispers such as Kettle Marty, We got a report from John Morosi earlier this week that said the Diamondbacks are actively listening to offers. We also got news from Morosi that the Phillies and Blue Jays are teams that have checked in on Ketel Marte, as they are both not on Marte's no-trade list. That is the type of guy that I'm willing to take a big swing for. That is the type of guy that I'm 100% willing to move on from a player like Bryson Stott as an upgrade. He is a switch hitter. He does have some legitimate pop. He is a contact guy, and he's also on the younger side that can sort of preserve this era a little bit. That's the type of player that I'm willing to cash some chips in for. I am curious how legitimate that is. I would expect we probably hear a little bit more buzz about this week. Be interesting to see the direction that the Diamondbacks are eyeing, but Ketel Marte is probably the most, I would say, needle-moving name that the Phillies have been connected to at this stage of the offseason. On the other bright side of things, I do think JT Realmuto is likely to re-sign here. Ken Rosenthal and Jim Bowden believe that. They say, quote, "The best guess with Realmuto is that he will re-sign with the Philadelphia Phillies, his team since 2019. I'm not going to say money is not important, and there could be a team, theoretically, that could blow the Phillies out of the water with an offer. But I do think both Schwarber and Realmuto are guys that, in their heart of hearts, would prefer that the highest dollar figure, the most money, the most interest comes from Philadelphia. I also would hope that these are guys that have enough loyalty to the organization that if that grandfather offer does come in, you give John Middleton a call and say, look, man, this is what just got thrown in front of me. These are the years. These are the dollars. Can you match that? Can I stay here for that price? And I would think John Middleton would be willing. Obviously, these aren't conversations we can have without the numbers, the years, the details to fully acknowledge what that risk reward is. But I do hope that there is enough communication and sort of a relationship there for that to be the case. Now, the other big ticket free agent for this Phillies offseason, and unfortunately the writing continues to look further and further more cemented on the wall, is Ranger Suarez. The reason I say that after this week is the report we got that Dylan Cease signed with the Blue Jays for a 7-year, $210 million offer. Ranger Suarez's agent, Scott Boras, has to be licking his chops right now. Let me give you the breakdown of those two directly. Dylan Cease is a guy who's coming off a season where he pitched 32 games, 168 innings pitched, gave up 21 home runs, struck out 215, allowed 152 hits, a 4.55 ERA, and a 1.327 whip. To contrast that with what we saw from Ranger Suarez this season, he pitched in 26 games, went 157.1 innings pitched, gave up just 14 home runs, 154 hits, 151 strikeouts, a 3.2 ERA, and a 1.222 whip. I do think this is an overpay straight up for Dylan Cease. I think he's a fine pitcher. I think he's a guy that does make sense. I understand why the Blue Jays were willing to spend and wanted to bring him in, but that is a contract that I do not think is going to age particularly great. And I do think Ranger Suarez is just straight up a better pitcher than Dylan Cease. Now, he does have injury issues. He hasn't been the most consistently available, and the velocity dip is something that I think some teams will be concerned by. But Ranger Suarez is going to get a bag from a team this winter. I just hope it is not a team that we have to actively root against. It will break my heart if this is like a Mets edition or something along those lines. Go play in the American League where I can root for Ranger Suarez from afar. Go play for the Padres or whoever the case may be. But I do think that there is pretty much zero chance that Ranger Suarez remains in a Phillies uniform for this upcoming season. The rumors are swirling, the news is picking up, and the Phillies are beginning to piece together what their offseason is going to look like. I do hope there is a sense of urgency within the walls of the organization following these reports in connection to the Red Sox. The Phillies need to be ready to beat them to the podium to get that ink dry and begin to establish what the next steps are. I do think Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto are the start of the offseason. The sooner you can get those loose ends tied up, you can begin to build forward for the rest of the offseason. We'll see if things change, but I do think that we're going to have some news in the coming days and weeks, and the offseason is going to really begin to take form. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think the Phillies should do? Should they match whatever it takes to keep Schwarber? Is Realmuto still worth bringing back? Let me know your take on all of this.